Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Getting to the Point. I am your host, Cindy Skalicki, and today I am bringing you the team that is Crafted Leadership. We have Nancy Kettner and Julianna Christie, who are the co-founders of Crafted Leadership, a leadership consultancy here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I'll just give you the quick 1-2 punch of how we all met. It's been lovely to meet these women. Nancy and I met several years ago now, right, Nancy? Yep. When I came to one of the events that she put on at the Fort Collins Country Club, and we had a coffee after that, and I began to work a little bit with Nancy on some public speaking skills. And then, I don't know, about 5 or 6 months after that, I had the privilege to finally meet her partner in crime, Julianna Christie, who lives in Salt Lake City and and they're both just absolute gems of women. So I will just let them each introduce themselves really quickly now. And what we're going to do today is talk through 3 points about communication. There's a lot of overlap between On Point and Crafted Leadership, and I talk a lot about one of their specific pieces called the art of the toss. And that's one of the pieces we're going to dive into today. So Nancy, would you give us a little bit about you? And then we'll talk to Julianna.
Sure. The main thing I think I want to communicate is I wanted to start Crafted Leadership because of my own experience learning how difficult it was to be a leader. And the skills that we teach, that Julianna and I teach, are meant to be very practical and hands-on and immediately applicable, but also applicable for a lifetime. So that's what we're up to, and we'd like to say that leadership is a way of life, not a title, which Cindy, you helped us get to, that's the way we roll.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's been a great learning. I love your analogy of you don't have to have a title to be a leader. If you walk down the street and you pick up a piece of trash to throw it away, you are demonstrating leadership. So no matter what you do in your life or how old you are, you can be a leader. Thanks, Nancy. How about you, Juliana? Give us a little info on your background and why you love what you do.
Hey, Cindy. Let's see. I love teaching communication when it comes to leaders. Looks like we may have not lost Nancy for a minute.
Yeah, let's see what happened here.
Thanks, Cindy. It's really nice to be here. I love the work that we're up to. I love supporting leaders. I feel like organizations are a fabulous platform for positive change in our culture, so it gets me really excited. We teach a whole range of skills that have to do with conflict resolution and feedback and emotional literacy, but one arm of our curriculum has to do with communication. It's a sweet spot for both Nancy and me, and it's a place where we align, Cindy, and I've learned so much from you about communicating. I'm really grateful for that, and I love how much you remember and run with the skills that we teach around communication, so this is quite a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, let me lay the groundwork for our audience just a little bit further and let them know that I was able to come in and attend the 3-day leadership conference that is called Lead by Design that Julianna and Nancy normally run in person, which of course is paused at least in person right now. But this 3-day retreat, if you will, is with a smallish group, at least that's what mine was. And if you can imagine, we were sitting in this large room in the first level of a bank here in Fort Collins back in February 2019, right? And there were about 12 of us total, and we came in every day and sat with in a large circle with the chairs. We had a great workbook. You took us through the majority of your architecture of inspiring leaders, and it was amazing. And I will just say that although I'm not a part of an organization, I'm a consultant, and there's really just me and an assistant, I can't begin to say how much I've learned about how to apply your techniques in my personal life and in my business communication. So especially now with COVID here upon us, but even when it's, hopefully a distant memory, your skill set that you teach is so applicable to small businesses, large organizations. There's always conflict in an organization. And so I could just talk about you from the rooftops and the value that you bring to organizations, and your give first nature is awesome. So let's dive in. Let's talk communication. When you talk about that in your architecture, let's start with Nancy. We are going to touch on speaking, listening, and the art of the toss. So Nancy, do you want to touch on the first part for us?
Sure. So the first thing for us on speaking is a definition. And our definition of what we call resonant speaking is taking 100% responsibility for creating the conditions for listeners to engage with you. That means that you forfeit your right to say he or she is a bad listener, because you're taking responsibility for your role in the speaking. So that's kind of a key point. And do you want me to share a tip?
Yes, please. Yes, absolutely.
So one tip, and I know I'm making up a story, Cindy, that you are particularly probably familiar with this, is to avoid what we call the long toss as a speaker. And we'll share you the art of the toss, but you'll probably figure this out. So it would look something like this. This is what it would look like, a long toss. So Cindy, just ask me a question.
Nancy, what's one of the favorite skills that you teach at Crafted Leadership?
Well, I love talking about speaking, because speaking is such an art form, and everyone needs to learn how to speak right. And some people speak way too long and they take up too much space. And you probably experienced that, Cindy, but I'll tell you about how I've experienced it when people talk a lot and they just keep going. And you over there is practically just falling asleep, right? You're doing that. And you know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. That's an example of the long toss.
Right. Yes. I'm glad you gave us that drop in the bucket, and we are going to get to more about the toss, because this skill set is just critical. I just did an event recently about networking calls and how to really maximize those on Zoom. And I'm always talking about the toss. You have to share the conversation. So we'll define that closer in point number 3. But why don't we go ahead and move to point number 2 from Julianna about listening. And Julianna is a rock star at listening. So tell us about listening, Julianna.
Thanks, Cindy. Something you might not know about me is, in my previous career, I was a researcher for many years. And in all the years that I conducted interviews and discussions, I learned 2 things for sure. Number 1, everyone wants to be heard. Every single person, they just light up when someone is in their presence and wanting to hear what they have to say. Number 2, you can never underestimate the value of a well-crafted question.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I mean, this is like an art form I can really get into. Nancy, I know you do too. And Cindy, I know you do too. And a well-crafted question is one that is, I would say, a wide scope, open-ended. Because the last thing you want to do is corral someone into an answer by the nature of the question that you ask. So an example would be of a poorly crafted question. This is one that gets under my skin a little bit. It's a question like, "You good?" Right?
Yeah.
You're like boxing someone in. It's a yes or no question.
Yep.
It sort of drives someone to want to say yes, because what else are you going to say to that?
Right. No, I'm not. And then let's talk about all my problems. Right. Yes.
So we like open-ended, wide scope questions that let the speaker really drive where the conversation goes. So Nancy and I have crafted, with the help of our teacher, by the way, Gay and Katie Hendricks, we've added to a list of what we call high quality listening prompts that do just that. And I'll give you some examples, but I want to share one other detail, which is how we even define resonant listening. It's the corollary to the definition Nancy shared for speaking. So resonant listening is taking 100% responsibility for listening for accuracy when the other person is speaking. So you're taking responsibility for understanding and also creating the conditions for the other person to speak freely and honestly. So you as the listener, you get to generate that in the conversation. So good questions really do that. So some examples of what we call high quality listening prompts would be things like, tell me more.
Yes.
Or what interests you about that? You're going to hear me probably, one of us use some of these questions. I love the question, what do you most want me to know about that? It's a question that one of my close girlfriends and I use. When we have a catch-up call, we say, what are the things that you think I would want to know about what's happened since we last spoke?
And let me put this into a little context here, because I love what you're talking about, Juliana. And so much of these questions and these open-ended styles of question asking come into play in business when we are either not understanding what someone else does, or there has been conflict around an agreement that has been broken, perhaps, which means, hey, for example, hey, I thought you were going to turn that into me by 5 o'clock. Why didn't you? Right? Or something, these are blaming sorts of tones, and they also are not we have to take responsibility for whatever our part was if something didn't go the way that we think it should have. So that's one of the huge pieces I learned from both of you, was when something's wrong, something doesn't work well, when you feel wronged, or that something was not done well, you have to pause before you toss blame and say, well, wait a sec, what was my role? And let me first take ownership of that. And then with open-ended questions like you're saying, Juliana, let's find out more, and then be corrective, be open to those other pieces. So those are great questions. What do you think, Juliana or Nancy, about, sometimes open-ended questions can bring a long toss from the person. So what can we say to the audience here about, hey, when you're given a long toss, or I'm sorry, when you're given an open-ended question, how can you respond tightly? Do one of you have a thought? You can just kind of raise your hand who would like to speak first.
I witnessed a conversation once that blew my mind. It was kind of in my early days of studying with the Hendricks, and I was in a car with two women, one student in the car that had been studying for a long time, and she asked a question to the other woman and said, so what do you think of the training? The time we were driving to the airport on a long drive. And she went on for about 20 minutes. And I was like, I wonder how she's going to handle this. And the other woman said, I noticed that was a long toss. Just like that. And I was like, you can say that? Yes, you can.
You guys taught me that you can say that.
Yes. And I thought, what a brilliant presencing move. She just said the thing that was on her mind, and she didn't do some version of kind of, I don't know, judging and withholding. It was really electric for me, and stayed
That's
with
great.
Yeah.
Great. I think that it just does, as speakers, when we are asked a question, we have to also be mindful of a short toss back. They'll ask more questions if they want more information, right? Nancy, do you have a final thought on that before we start talking about the toss?
Well, I have a strong preference for succinctness. So my approach is to really work with leaders to develop their self-awareness of, is the person with you? And pretty quickly you can see if their eyes are wandering, if they're yawning, if if you're paying attention, if you've lost them. So I would say self-awareness and a preference for what Katie and Gay say is one out breath. The more you can make your point in one out breath,
Oh,
the more people are with you, stay with you.
I think they appreciate that, your brevity.
Yeah.
I have not heard about the guys on this very call. This is great. Well, before we move to the art of the toss, so far we've talked about resonant speaking and resonant listening. And the awareness piece that you just said, Nancy, really seems to ring true while we are all working from home. Because you know how when you're in a group, you cannot see yourself paying attention? Well, we
Yes.
can now, can't we? We can see ourselves paying attention or not. I never really thought of that till right now, but it's true. We're all captivated on these little thumbnail screens, and we can see and hear how long our tosses are based on how long the green square is lit up around our little Zoom thumbnail, right? So Nancy, would you like to jump us forward here to the art of a toss and explain what that means for someone who's never heard of that before and why it's important?
Sure. So the art of the toss is a visual metaphor for the easy flow between speaking and listening. It's a balance between speaking and listening. We actually use, when we teach this, a prop, in this case, a tennis ball, to help people see how long am I talking? How, when I'm listening, am I engaging in these high quality listening prompts? It's probably easiest demonstrated with a demo. Would you like us to do that? And would you like to play along, Cindy?
I would love to. Do you want me to participate or monitor?
What do you think, Jules? Can we do a art of the toss now?
Go for it.
So I'm going to have, the way I'd like to do it is, Cindy, have you talk about something you're really passionate about, and you're going to be tossing back and forth with Julianna.
Okay.
And I know you don't have a tennis ball, but if you have even your finger, you can use as a prompt.
So can I tap the screen maybe? I've got like a pencil. I could tap Julianna when I'm ready to throw the ball.
Yes.
With a tap.
So we're perfect. We're going to model the art of the toss in the right way. Is that what we're going to do right now? Okay.
Yes.
I'm moving it. Julianna, you have to ask me a question to start us off.
All right. Cindy, will you tell us about something that you're feeling excited about these days? It can be anything that you're feeling passionate about.
Yes, I can. Thanks, Julianna. I will tell you that I'm very excited about a new program that I just started to share, where I'm able to help everyone who is on my social channels get one tip every day at 9 o'clock in the morning. So the point is to try to help everyone learn little ways to nail it every single day at 9 a.m.
What interests you about that?
I feel interested to see how people respond, and also interested to see what kinds of tips people resonate with the most and engage with in the platforms. So that's part of the reason that I'm excited. How about you, Julianna? What is something that's interesting to you right now that you could share with me?
Oh, she flipped it around, Nancy. Let's see.
Well, I was feeling like my answers were longer and you were just asking questions. That's why I flipped it.
Nice. So I'm going to take the toss. I am so in love with bike riding right now. I've been doing it most evenings, sometimes for hours, and discovering new neighborhoods and really feeling healthy in my body. Back to you.
That sounds wonderful. My daughter is also doing the same thing. She's in the middle of, and her big break during the day is to take a 1-hour bike ride down some of the paths in our neighborhood. Do you have a cool bike that you're really excited to hop on, or is it something you've had for a long time, like an old 10-speed or something?
All right, taking the toss back. It's a bike I've had about 6 years, and it's one of these hybrid bikes, and I love it because I can go into a gear that's very friendly on hills.
I'll pause you. That's the example of the art of the toss. You happen to be very skilled at it, Cindy. And I'll just say that most people, this is an undeveloped skill.
Mm.
And it takes practice like anything. So whether you usually preference one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know, just ask someone close to you. They will tell you, yeah, you're more of a talker. You do have some long tosses, or it looks like mostly you default to listening. Anyway, you can get feedback right away by asking someone, do you think you're more of a talker or listener? And then really work on honing that.
Well, I think what I've noticed when we were doing that is that Julianna had taken on the role of the asker and I had taken on the role of the answerer. And this is so often what happens in networking calls. One person's always asking and the other person's always answering. So for all of you watching, how can you disrupt that pattern and throw a good toss to the other person that you're trying to get to know? And so otherwise the rhythm just keeps going. And that's not always bad. It's just that if you have a short amount of time to get to know someone, you want to do a little bit of both. So that was a fun exercise, ladies. Thanks for helping us understand that a little bit better. Well, it's been wonderful having you both on. I would like to throw at you, I guess it's kind of a toss, but it's a rapid fire question for each of you. So I'll ask you both the same question. And then if we have time, I'll ask one more. So maybe give me a short toss back, if you would. My first question is for Nancy, and Jules, you'll get the same one. My first question is, what book is on your bedside table that is not in your background that you're reading? And do you have one tip that you could share with our audience that you're learning from it?
Oh, this is like a dream question. Yes, I have it. It's actually right underneath my computer. It's a book by one of my heroes, Martina Navratilova. It's called Shape Your Life. And she was like one of the great tennis players of all time. And one tip that she had was, the ball doesn't know how old I am. So she, at 63, is still playing tennis. And that's her philosophy. The ball doesn't know how old I am. And I love that.
That's awesome. And that's so much story packed into it. I might steal that and credit you and write a post about it or something, but that's fantastic. Julianna, what book is on your proverbial bedside table and what tip can you give?
I was trying to think of the title and I don't have it on the tip of my tongue, so I'm going to talk about a podcast instead.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm a big fan of Esther Perel. She has a podcast called Where Should We Begin? These are therapy sessions that people agree to be recorded.
Oh, yeah.
She's doing a series on couples under lockdown, couples living together in the time of COVID-19. And she's such a good listener and such a good paraphraser back. And one of my favorite phrases, I shared this with you, Nancy, recently. She asked in a session, were you raised for loyalty or were you raised for autonomy? Isn't that a great, juicy question?
Yes.
I think he's going to take that and write another blog about it.
Well, my immediate response is, does it have to be an either or? So I will think about that.
But you can imagine in couples tends to be.
Yes. Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, let's use that as a segue, because my last question to each of you is, what are you missing the most right now from being able to be with other people in the ways that we normally have been? Nancy?
Yeah, I really miss being physically present with people because of the whole nonverbal communication. The 2D is okay, but the 3D is so much better. I don't have fatigue when I'm just sitting and having conversations with people in person.
Yeah.
But the Zoom fatigue is real for me.
It is real, and I have thought a lot about why that is, and I keep landing on the same thing, which is that when you're looking at and experiencing people with only like 6 inches or 10 inches, and you don't have the whole body and the whole room and the whole environment with you, there's this intentionally added pressure to demonstrate attention constantly. You know, I mean, you have to tell people if you're looking down to take notes, or, you know, you might think to do that so you don't ever want other people thinking that you aren't paying attention. And that in itself takes a lot of effort. Thanks, Nancy. Juliana, how about you?
Yeah, similar. We use this phrase, whole body listening, that registers the whole body of the other person. So I miss the body, the communication that comes from a whole body when they turn a foot this way, or what they're doing with their hands, and that the fact that all that's hidden is a little maddening at times.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a greedy listener.
Yes, well, you are a full body listener and very present person. Along those lines, one thing people can do on Zoom to demonstrate as much full body listening as possible is still sitting on the edge of their chair as they're speaking. And if you're on the call as the presenter, you know, I always encourage people to literally lean in, and, you know, you want to be kind of staring at that really ugly looking dot that I'm staring into right now, so I can fake eye contact with you. But when you're looking at my screen, it looks like I'm looking right at you. And that's connectivity and connection that, you know, we have to try to figure out how to do on these kinds of calls. Well, thank you, ladies. This has been so much fun. We are going to wrap. I will ask you this. What is a good way for people to get a hold of you if they want to learn more? Or do you have a couple social, you know, handles that you would like to share? Nancy, how about if you take that one?
Yeah, it's real easy to get in touch with Julianna or me at nancy@craftedleadership.com, julianna@craftedleadership.com. And we have a LinkedIn page, social, Facebook, Twitter. We post a lot of these kind of leadership tips there.
Yep, perfect. And then there's a newsletter. If they want to sign up for the newsletter, can they go to the website, or what's the best?
You go to the website and sign up right there.
Great. And those are highly valuable pieces. I would encourage anyone who wants to just kind of dip their toe into crafted leadership to get on that list and start receiving some of your very well crafted communications. So thanks, ladies. I'm going to wave and sign off, but it's been lovely to have you, and it won't be long before we're able to see you in person. Until then, thanks for getting to the point with Julianna Christie and Nancy Kevner of Crafted Leadership. Have a great day.
Thanks, Cindy.
Bye.
Bye.